If you're a woman over 45 who's been doing everything right, eating carefully, walking every day, cutting back on sugar, and you still feel exhausted by noon and completely frustrated when you look in the mirror, what I'm about to share with you may be the most important thing you hear this year. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I've spent years studying hormonal health, menopause science, and the everyday habits that either work with a woman's body after 45 or quietly work against it. And in all that time, one pattern surprised me more than anything else I discovered. The women who feel the most exhausted are almost always the women trying the hardest. Skipping desserts, walking every morning, making every sacrifice they can think of, and still drained, frustrated, and no closer to feeling like themselves. That's when I realized something that changed everything for me. The problem was never a lack of discipline. We have simply been looking in the wrong direction entirely. If that just hit close to home, please hit like and subscribe. Every week, I share honest, practical content about hormonal health for women over 45, because understanding what's happening in your body changes everything. And quickly, before we go further, if you've been feeling this way for a while and you're ready for a clear, structured path forward, I created something called the Hormone Reset Guide. It's a complete daily system to help support hormone balance, reduce belly fat, and reclaim your energy after 45. There's a full module specifically on metabolism and weight after 45, and a bonus guide called 7 Foods That May Be Worsening Your Menopause Symptoms, which alone has helped so many women finally understand why their efforts weren't producing results. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. This video is educational, based on wellness principles and good practices. It's not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Always work with your healthcare provider. Now, there's a specific hormone, one that conventional health conversations rarely focus on in this context, that may be quietly driving both the exhaustion and the belly fat that so many women over 45 can't seem to shift no matter what they do. Most women have never heard it discussed this way, and once you understand what it is and how it works inside your body right now, you're going to start seeing everything differently. Stay with me, because this is where it gets important. For decades, women have been handed the same explanation for weight gain and fatigue after 45. Eat less, move more, try harder, sleep better, reduce stress, and so they do. They follow the advice precisely and faithfully. They show up every single day, and the results simply don't match the effort. And that gap, that maddening disconnect between how hard you're working and how little is changing, is not a personal failure. It is a biological signal. After 45, the hormonal landscape inside a woman's body shifts in ways that are profound, specific, and largely invisible to the strategies most women have been given. What worked at 35, the calorie deficit, the morning run, the willpower, simply doesn't produce the same results in a body operating under a completely different hormonal reality, not because something is wrong with you, but because the rules have changed, and nobody told you. Here's what most women were never taught. There are hormones beyond estrogen and progesterone that play an enormous role in how your body manages energy, stores fat, and regulates how rested you feel, even after a full night of sleep. And one of them, when dysregulated after 45, creates a very specific pattern that looks almost identical to what you may be experiencing right now. Persistent fatigue that doesn't improve with rest. Belly fat that accumulates regardless of diet. A kind of heaviness, physical and emotional, that simply wasn't there a few years ago. This isn't aging. This is a hormonal pattern with a name, a mechanism, and, importantly, practical everyday habits that may help support your body through it. Most women never hear this part, and that's exactly why we're going to talk about it today. So let's start where the confusion usually begins. For most of her life, a woman's hormonal system operates like a well-rehearsed orchestra. Estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, insulin, thyroid hormones, each one playing its part, communicating with the others, adjusting in real time to keep the body balanced, energized, and functioning well. You don't notice the orchestra when it's in tune. You only notice when something shifts. And after 45, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, progressively, and in ways that most conventional health advice simply isn't equipped to address. The first hormone most women think about during this time is estrogen, which makes sense. But here's what most women were never told. Estrogen doesn't work alone. It never did. When estrogen begins to fluctuate, it sets off a cascade of changes throughout the entire hormonal system. Changes that directly affect how your body manages energy, where it stores fat, how deeply you sleep, and how rested you actually feel when you open your eyes in the morning. This cascade is what we need to talk about. One of the first dominoes to fall is progesterone. Most women associate progesterone almost entirely with fertility, which means that when it begins to decline during perimenopause, its far broader impact on the body goes completely unrecognized. But progesterone does something that matters enormously to how you feel every single day. Research suggests it plays a meaningful role in promoting deep, restorative sleep. It may help regulate the body's stress response, and it appears to have a natural balancing effect on cortisol, keeping the stress hormone from running too high for too long. When progesterone drops, that balancing effect weakens, and cortisol, without its natural counterweight, may begin to rise. Not in dramatic spikes, but persistently, quietly, in a way that the body feels long before any test would flag it. This is where many women get stuck, because what follows is a cycle that is almost invisible from the outside, but deeply felt from the inside. Cortisol's primary job is to mobilize energy when the body perceives a threat. In short bursts, it is essential and life-sustaining. The problem after 45 is that it can stop functioning in short bursts and begin operating as a chronic background hum, always slightly elevated, never fully switching off. And here's what that means in practical terms. Chronically elevated cortisol signals the body to store fat specifically in the abdominal area. Not as a punishment, not because of anything you ate, but because the body, reading those persistent stress signals, is prioritizing energy storage close to its vital organs. An ancient survival mechanism that made perfect sense for our ancestors and produces nothing but frustration for a woman in 2025 who is doing absolutely everything she's been told to do. And here is something I've observed consistently over the years. The women who felt the worst were almost always the women who blamed themselves the most. They believed the problem was a lack of discipline or motivation or willpower. But the body is far more interconnected than we often realize. Hormones rarely work alone. They are in constant communication with one another. And what these women were experiencing had almost nothing to do with effort and everything to do with a biological shift that simply needed to be understood. That realization alone, that this is not a personal failure but a hormonal pattern, changes something. The self-criticism softens. The exhaustion begins to feel less like evidence of inadequacy and more like information. And information is something you can work with. But cortisol is only part of the picture. When cortisol rises, it triggers the release of glucose into the bloodstream, the body preparing its muscles for action. Insulin then rises in response, working to move that glucose into the cells. But after 45, something significant changes in this process. The cells may gradually become less responsive to insulin's signal. This is insulin resistance, and some studies suggest it becomes considerably more common during the hormonal transition after 45, even in women with healthy diets and active lifestyles. When cells resist insulin's signal, the body compensates by producing more of it. And chronically elevated insulin is strongly associated in the research with increased fat storage, particularly visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat that feels different from anything you may have carried before. Denser, more stubborn, completely unresponsive to the approaches that used to work. And all of this is unfolding against the backdrop of fluctuating estrogen, which brings us to a connection that almost no one talks about, But that may explain one of the most common and distressing symptoms women over 45 experience: the kind of fatigue that sleep simply doesn't fix. Estrogen has a significant relationship with thyroid function. The thyroid is the body's metabolic engine. It regulates how efficiently food is converted into energy, how warm you feel, how clearly you think, how quickly your heart beats. Research suggests that the estrogen fluctuations of perimenopause can affect the thyroid's ability to function at its best, not necessarily causing clinical thyroid disease, but potentially nudging thyroid function toward the slower end of its range. Subtle enough that it may not appear on a standard panel, but significant enough that the woman inside that body notices it every day. A metabolism that feels sluggish, energy that never quite arrives, a mental fog that settles in despite adequate sleep. This is not mystery. This is a system in transition. And once you can see the full picture, everything begins to make sense. What I've found over years of studying this is that no single hormone is the villain here. It is the conversation between them: progesterone falling, cortisol rising, insulin resistance developing, thyroid function shifting, that creates the experience so many women describe as feeling invisible in their own bodies. And understanding that full picture is not discouraging. It is freeing, because patterns that are understood can be supported. And supporting them does not require extreme measures. It requires the right adjustments, applied consistently in the right sequence. This is exactly why I created the Hormone Reset Guide. After years of watching women exhaust themselves trying harder at the wrong things, I wanted to create something practical, a complete daily system that meets women exactly where they are after 45 and gives them a clear path forward. Module 2 walks through the specific relationship between metabolism, cortisol, insulin sensitivity, and belly fat, and the everyday habits that research suggests may help support each of these areas. And the 30-day hormone reset tracker, included as a bonus, helps you begin identifying your own patterns, so the changes you make start to feel meaningful and connected to real results rather than another round of guesswork. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. I'd love for you to explore it. Now, let's get specific, because knowing the hormonal picture is one thing. Walking away with a practical starting point is what actually begins to shift how you feel. The first area worth addressing is sleep quality, and not simply sleep duration. The body does its most important hormonal repair work during deep sleep, and cortisol disruption is one of the primary reasons that repair work gets interrupted. Cortisol naturally follows a daily rhythm: highest in the morning to support waking, lowest at night to allow rest. When that rhythm is disrupted, cortisol can remain elevated into the evening, making it harder to fall into deep sleep and easier to wake in the middle of the night with the mind already running. To support this rhythm, consistent sleep and wake times are among the most evidence-backed adjustments you can make. The body's cortisol pattern responds strongly to regularity. Reducing or eliminating caffeine after noon gives the nervous system time to genuinely wind down. And a simple, consistent wind-down practice. In the hour before bed, whether that's gentle stretching, reading, a warm bath, or quiet breathing, signals to the adrenal system that the day is over and restoration can begin. The second area is how you eat, specifically in ways that support insulin sensitivity after 45. This is not about eating less. It is about eating differently. Prioritizing protein at every meal is one of the most consistently supported strategies in the research for stabilizing blood sugar and reducing the insulin spikes that drive fat storage. Aim to include a meaningful source of protein: eggs, fish, legumes, Greek yogurt, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Reducing refined carbohydrates and high sugar foods matters here too, not because of calorie counts, but because of the specific and exaggerated insulin response they can trigger in a body that is already managing insulin sensitivity changes. Eating within a consistent daily window, finishing your last meal 2 to 3 hours before sleep, may also help the body's overnight metabolic processes function more efficiently without requiring anything extreme or restrictive. The third area is movement, And this one requires a genuine rethink for many women. If you have been exercising hard and consistently, and your body has been holding on to weight and fatigue rather than releasing them, it is worth considering that intense, prolonged exercise is itself a significant cortisol trigger. In a younger body with stable hormones, the cortisol spike from a hard workout is short-lived and the recovery is efficient. In a body already managing chronic cortisol elevation, that same hard workout may be adding fuel to a fire that is already burning too hot. This is not a reason to stop moving. It is a reason to shift the balance. Brisk walking, which research consistently associates with reduced cortisol, is one of the most hormone-friendly forms of movement available. Resistance training 2 to 3 times a week supports the development of lean muscle, which in turn improves insulin sensitivity over time. And movement practices that combine gentle intensity with conscious breathing, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, may actively support cortisol regulation rather than adding to it. And underneath all of these practical adjustments is something that sounds simple but runs deeper than it might appear: releasing the expectation that you need to push harder to see results. Because the women who tend to experience the most meaningful shifts are not the ones who add more effort. They are the ones who redirect their effort toward the habits that actually work with their hormonal reality after 45, rather than against it. Your body has not turned against you. It has changed, and change, once understood, becomes something entirely different from what it felt like before. So before we close today, I want to give you something concrete. Not a list of 20 things to overhaul, not a complete lifestyle transformation that needs to happen by Monday. Just one place to begin. Because in my experience, the women who make the most lasting changes are rarely the ones who change everything at once. They are the ones who find the right starting point and build from there with patience and intention. And based on everything we covered today, the single most impactful place most women can begin is the evening. Here is why. Everything we discussed, the cortisol dysregulation, the insulin resistance, the thyroid sluggishness, the sleep disruption, all of it is either reinforced or gently supported by what happens in the 2 hours before you go to sleep. Cortisol needs to fall in the evening for the body to enter restorative sleep. Insulin needs a break from food so overnight metabolic processes can function properly. The nervous system needs genuine signals that the day has ended and safety has arrived, and most women over 45 are inadvertently sending the opposite signals. Eating late, scrolling through their phones, running through tomorrow's to-do list in their heads, without realizing that these habits are keeping the hormonal stress response quietly activated at exactly the moment the body most needs to stand down. So tonight, just tonight, try this. Set a consistent time to finish eating, at least 2 hours before you intend to sleep. Dim the lights in your home in the last hour before bed. Put the phone down 30 minutes earlier than usual. And if you can, spend 5 minutes doing something that asks nothing of your mind. Slow breathing, gentle stretching, sitting quietly with a cup of herbal tea. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive, nothing that requires willpower or discipline or sacrifice. Just a signal, a small, clear, biological signal that tells your cortisol rhythm, the day is over. You can let go now. That one shift, practiced consistently over several weeks, may begin to change the quality of your sleep in ways that ripple outward into your energy, your appetite, your mood, and yes, over time, your body's ability to release the fat it has been holding onto for protection. You don't need to fix everything tonight. You just need to begin in the right place. And I want to be honest with you about something, because I think it matters. The journey of understanding your hormones after 45 is not always linear. There will be weeks that feel like progress, and weeks that feel like nothing is changing. There will be mornings where you wake up with energy and mornings where the fatigue returns, and you wonder if any of this is working. That is normal. That is the nature of hormonal transitions. They are not straight lines. They are waves, and the goal is not to eliminate the waves, but to become steadier within them. What changes everything is not perfection. It is understanding. Because a woman who understands what her body is doing, even on the hard days, responds differently than a woman who doesn't. She doesn't spiral into self-blame. She doesn't abandon the habits that are actually helping her. She recognizes the wave for what it is, stays steady, and keeps going. That steadiness is what I want for you. That is what all of this is really about. If you want a structured, practical system to support you through this transition, something that organizes everything we talked about today into a clear, daily framework, I'd love for you to take a look at the Hormone Reset Guide. It was created specifically for women over 45 who are done guessing and ready for a path that actually works with their hormonal reality. Module 2 covers exactly what we explored today: the cortisol and insulin connection, the practical nutrition and movement adjustments, and how to begin supporting your metabolism in ways that are sustainable and evidence-informed. And the 30-day hormone reset tracker gives you a simple daily tool to start noticing your own patterns, your energy, your sleep, your hunger, so the changes you make feel personal, connected, and real. The link is in the description below and in the pinned comment. Take a look when you're ready. There's no rush. But if today resonated with you, it may be exactly what you've been looking for. And now, I want to speak to you directly for just a moment. Not as a wellness educator, not as someone sharing research and habits and hormonal mechanisms, just as one woman to another. If you have spent months or years feeling exhausted and frustrated and invisible in your own body, I want you to know something. That experience was real. Every bit of it. The tiredness that never lifted. The belly that wouldn't budge no matter what you did. The quiet grief of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the woman looking back. All of it was real, and all of it made sense. Even when no one around you could explain why. You were not failing. You were not weak. You were not someone who simply needed more discipline or more willpower or more effort. You were a woman whose body was changing in ways that no one had properly explained to her. And you kept showing up anyway. You kept trying. You kept caring enough about yourself to look for answers. That matters. That is not nothing. That is everything. Your body is not broken. It has simply changed. And now that you understand a little more about how it has changed and what it actually needs from you right now, everything that felt impossible begins to look different. Not easy necessarily, but possible. Genuinely, specifically, practically possible. I'm so glad you were here today. If this video helped you see something more clearly, please share it with a woman in your life who might need to hear it too. And I'll see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself. You deserve it more than you know.